These guys are really out to hurt us, to kill us. Anyway, my ship landed in Italy, southern Italy, and we disembarked, no problem or anything, no. But they assigned us to an air base in Italy that was held by was being operated by the Royal Air Force. So we get out the feel of things, just for the first 2-3 on us. And I remember when we arrived, we asked the Royal Air Force guys, did the Germans bother you guys? And the guy said, nah, they don't. They used to, but they don't bother us anymore. On the very second night, the German Air Force came over and bombed our field. I said, geez, you guys have a bad memory. He said, they don't come anymore. Now we're in combat for the first time in end of January of 1944. That's when my squadron entered combat for the first time. And we were assigned to do patrol work up and down the Tyrrhenian Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the German bombers. The German bombers used to come overnight and bomb Naples and Salerno and some of our airfields, and our fighters was there to ward them off. Now we're flying a new airplane. They switched the airplanes on us. We were flying Curtiss P-40s up to this point. Now we're flying an airplane called the Bel Air Cobra. I don't have any models of it here, but the Bel Air Cobra was a slick-looking airplane with a nose wheel, and the engine's located behind the pilot, and there's a huge cannon, a 37mm cannon on the nose of the airplane, which was very effective against German trucks and sometimes tanks. It would stop a tank. It wouldn't blow the tank away, it would knock the tread off, but it would blow a 2.5-ton truck up with a 37mm shell. And that's what we were using. And that was our first taste of combat for my squadron. And when we sank, there was so much prejudice in the Army in the 1940s. Still, the Army was still segregated, You had all black outfits or all white outfits. No mixed outfits back in those days. And in the black outfits, all the officers from colonel on up were white. The majors and the captains were black. But we were the only combat unit in World War II. The Tuskegee Airmen, the 332nd Fighter Group, was the only all-black combat unit in the whole war, American. Because all our officers, our commanding officer was a colonel. And all the officers in our squadron, all the enlisted men were black. There were 7 fighter groups. We were one of 7 fighter groups. Ours was all black. And there were 21 bomb groups. And we all worked together on bombing raids to Germany, Yugoslavia, Greece, and a lot to Romania, where the oil fields were in Romania. And we'd fly together, we'd go into combat together, the same strafing missions, the same dogfights, the same protecting the bombers. But when we came back home, our guys landed on our base, and all the white guys down to their base. Nothing to do with each other, absolutely nothing to do with each other. My mother taught me that you had to take a bath no later than once every week, at least on Saturday, if not 2 or 3 times a week. You had to take your 3 square meals a day, otherwise you'd come apart. You had to do this, you had to do that, and I learned in the Army you didn't have to do anything. There were times we didn't have food for 2 days. The only thing we would have would be coffee and hard cookies, because for some reason the supply lines broke down. Well, it broke down because the Germans were interfering with the supply lines. I learned that if I didn't bathe every Saturday, I wouldn't come apart, because we lived in tents. Throughout the whole period of time, 18 months, for 18 months I lived in a tent. A 6-man, they called them a 6-man perimeter tent. And I lived with 5 buddies. I have the pictures here I could show you. And we set up an arrangement whereby each soldier could take a bath once a month, take a shower rather. We wash ourselves up in our steel helmets. We'd heat up the water in our helmet and wash ourselves down every day, brush our teeth every day like we should. But to get a real honest to goodness shower, only once a month, each soldier. One of my pilots, flying the P-51 on a mission to Berlin, on his way back to our base in southern Italy, was running short on fuel, him and his wingman. The wingman is your buddy, the guy who flies with you. And during the briefing, they were told that you could land in Poland, because the Russian army had overrun the Germans in Poland and had taken over their airfields. You can land on one of their old Luftwaffe air bases and refuel and then come home. And they did. My pilot was from Georgia, and this other guy, they landed on an airfield in Poland on the way to Italy. And the Russian soldiers told him get out of the cockpit with rifles, pointed guns at him, and told him you're under arrest. It wasn't until the war ended that my pilot showed up on my base James Mitchell, I thought I was looking at a ghost when he walked up there. In fact, he came in at night and shook my tent to wake me up. He said, "You're the first guy I'm talking to since coming back, because I knew you were concerned about me and your precious airplane and blah, blah, blah." I said, "Christ, you know, glad to see you alive. And what about the other guy?" "Well, he's okay too." He was also, he says, "You know what? That base was filled up with American prisoners, Air Force prisoners at this Russian base. And they're our allies. And they kept the airplanes." We were escorting bombers. One of our assignments was to escort bombers. One day on the return home, our fighters came in, got in and landed before the bombers. They had to go south of us. They had another hour's worth of flying before they reached their base. One of the bombs decided to land on our base because they had wounded guys, and some of the guys were shot, wounded, and they figured if they land on our base, they'd save an hour's worth of time to get them to a doctor, right? To one of those MASH units. And as he was approaching us, we saw this great big bomber coming in. It was odd to see a bomber coming into our fighter base out over the Adriatic Sea. And then he fired, his radio wasn't working. He fired some red flares out of the side. Whoop, we knew guys were hurt. So we got the ambulances out and the fire trucks. This is a 1, 2, 3. It's taken me longer to describe what happened than it took for what really happened. And we saw the 2 main wheels come down and no nose wheel. This bomber, the B-24, has a nose wheel. You better not try to land on that steel runway with no wheel. They'll all get killed. So the flight engineer, each bomber carries a mechanic, and they call the flight engineer. He climbed into the nose wheel and did what he was supposed to do. In performing his duties, one of the things a flight engineer does is to take care of all the emergencies that occur during the mission. His job was to get that nose wheel down. Well, he climbed up into that big wide opening in the front while the plane's coming into our field now. He's coming downhill. He doesn't intend to go around again. The wheel comes down, and when the wheel came down, the guy came out with it. The mechanic fell out of the hole and fell in the water, drowned. He didn't have a parachute. And like I say, you see, after you've seen that sort of thing for a whole year and a half, after a while you get so that you just count it, make a record of it, and just keep on trucking. You don't even feel sorry or say, what's his name? You know, where'd he come from? None of that. No investigations. The war ended in the spring of 1945. And we were at our last air base, place called Lucera. And they put us on the trucks and we did a little extra training because now we were preparing to go to the Pacific. We weren't coming home. We were told, you're not going back, you're not going home, you're going to India to fight the Japanese. But that never came about because they dropped the atomic bomb and the war ended.